What's happening, everybody? We're running another show within a show today on this lovely Thursday afternoon now, I suppose. Even here on the West Coast, it's the afternoon. This show is not being streamed live on Twitter for whatever reason. It just wasn't working. And so this is the kind of reason that if any of you are out there and thinking, come on, Dan, you keep saying you're not going to do it live on Twitter, and then you keep doing it. Well, technical difficulties. I hit the go live button on the stream, and it was like, hey, you're live on YouTube, but we're not going to do it on Twitter today. So I don't know what that's all about. In any event, it's a great reason for you guys to subscribe. All of the other places that this podcast can be found, all of those are in my Twitter pinned tweet at Dan Besbris. They're also in the show description as well. Welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, a founding show on the Old Man Squad Sports Network. I am Dan Besbris, and today we are joined by my good buddy Thunder Dan Palio. He's coming up here in just about a minute or so. What's nice about the way that I'm doing these shows right now is even on the video side, I don't really know going into the show what the guest and I are going to talk about. I have a very Curb Your Enthusiasm type of plan for it, which is like, hey, I'm going to ask you a couple of these. You don't even need to tell me before the show what it's going to be. And then I'm going to play a little devil's advocate. We'll go round and round. We'll see if we can come to some sort of conclusion on it. Maybe we just end up shooting the breeze for a while. But then that allows me to, when I go back later, to come up with a name for the show. So many of you guys actually know what's going on already based on what the name and thumbnail say. But going into it, I didn't know what we were going to talk about. I asked Dan, well, you'll see it in a second, thoughts on the season gone by. And yeah, let's just say it was really hard for me to play devil's advocate on this particular show topic. He's trying to butter me up or something over there. I don't think there's anything else I really needed to get into before we talk to Dan. Quick note that tomorrow we'll be talking to Matt Smith of Basketball Monster and creator of the Smitty, which is what we all are calling sleepers now, right? That caught on, didn't it? No? My non-existent producer is telling me no? Well, that's crap. We're going to have to work on that. Talk to Matt about that tomorrow. This is fun. Josh yesterday, Thunder Dan today, Matt Smith tomorrow. But right now, it's Thunder Dan time. So everybody sit back, relax, and enjoy. Yes, chronologically, he may be guest number 2, but he has the number 1 name of any guest that we will ever have on the show. And I'm not just talking because his first name is Dan, because he is Thunder Dan Palio at Thunder Dan DFS on social media. One of my good pals in this very weird industry, and a man that goes 366 days a year, multi-sport, full maniac level. Thunder Dan. What's up, dude? It's great to have you on the new, whatever the hell I called this show, Old Man Squad. How you do this?
I'm flattered. Thanks for having me and thinking of me. And let me just say, I feel right at home with the name of your new network, the Old Man Squad Sports. Every year, feeling it more and more. But thanks for that introduction. Yeah, I kind of go all year round with all these sports, but basketball is near and dear to my heart, and fantasy basketball especially. So, anyways,
how do you do it? How do you do year round? I get to the end of the fantasy basketball season, my brain is just like a puddle of goo, and you have to just go. I mean, you're already like baseball draft season starts 2 months before the basketball season ends.
Yeah, there are a few months every year that are incredibly challenging with overlap.
When you have all 3 going and like
September. The one it's people always get a kick out of this, but the one that I totally just like phase out of my brain for a good chunk of the year is football, because most of the industry is fascinated with football 365, it's obviously and it's almost kind of annoying how the NFL likes to look. We're going to release our schedule one day, and like people will talk about this on shows for 3 hours. Like,
seriously, it's a schedule.
It's a schedule. No one cares. So like, I love football as much as anybody else, but I take the opportunity. Football is actually the shortest of the 3 seasons, actual calendar wise.
Right.
So when football is over, like I dump it. I don't do draft stuff. I don't do college stuff. I'm happy to be in the middle of basketball season and doing uh, baseball prep. And baseball and basketball actually pair up pretty well in terms of how they run right into each other. And then football just pops up in the middle of it, and we just have to deal with football because if you don't,
Yeah, the
the
world
world
will
will
race
pass you
to
by.
death.
You
Which
don't
one
cover football, or like
is
so.
baseball the hardest just because there are 162 games and every team's got
Yeah,
26 guys right now? Is the active roster 26 these days?
yeah, it's 25. You get 20. I mean, and then
All right, doubleheader.
with
Yeah.
the number of prospects and minor league players and stuff to cut, that you have to at least be aware of each team's kind of top 3 or 4 prospects and guys at AAA and things like that. You have to. There's a lot to fit in your head for sure. So baseball's tough. Basketball's not too bad.
I love wow,
And
you preaching to the choir on that one.
yeah, yeah. So, but it does keep me busy all year round. And like I said, in the fall when football's going and NBA's in preseason and baseball's still wrapping up the World Series, that probably is the worst month and a half or so
Mm,
for me. But
yeah.
this spring hasn't been bad because, like I said, I just kind of forget about football and I let all the people who cover football full time deal with that, and I focus on basketball and baseball until about July or August when you got to start getting into football.
I'm
And
fine with that. Football's actually the one sport that I've never been interested in my entire life. So, that's not like for any particular reason. A native Angelino, we had two NFL teams when I was a little kid, and then we had
mm,
none for a while, and I don't know if
yeah,
that played a role in it, maybe. Um, but so okay, I have a baseball basketball question before we dig into some of the fantasy basketball topics du jour, which
sure,
can be anything because it's the off season.
yeah,
When I was because I've worked pretty closely with Joe Orico for the last
yeah,
couple of years, and I was bugging him about this too, and he was kind of telling me that I was probably going down the wrong path. But like one of the things that jumped out to me, because I'm a big baseball fan. I'm not a big fantasy baseball guy. I'm just a big
okay,
baseball fan. That was my
that's cool,
first sports love growing up, was going to Dodger games, sitting in the $4 nosebleed sections with my mom when I was like
nice,
4 years old. Um, so when I started to look at it from the fantasy standpoint, because I'm in one free fantasy baseball league every year, um, it felt like one of the big differences between baseball and basketball fantasy is that like with basketball, if there's a guy who gets quote unquote called up in sort of like whatever the parallel would be to baseball, the basketball player getting 30 minutes a game immediately deserves your fantasy attention. Like almost anybody playing 32 minutes a ball game in the NBA has some kind of measurable fantasy value. There are a lot of full-time baseball starters playing baseball starter level minutes, meaning just like in the starting lineup every day, that simply don't because they're just not good enough fantasy wise. And like a guy could get hurt and his replacement could get all of his at bats, and you still don't even really need to pay attention to that dude, which feels very much in stark contrast to the NBA, where it's like you need to know who immediately steps into that
hmm
28 to 32-minute role.
right,
So does that then help you on the baseball side kind of pare down how much you have to look at every night? Or is it just like, I got to make sure this guy doesn't get on a heater? Like, it's a lot,
yeah,
man. It's so many freaking ball games
it's
and so many
yeah.
freaking players.
Well, and that's what like if you're in like it all depends on like with basketball like the size of the league you're playing in like a 10 team league like you can kind of not pay
Yeah.
attention to a lot of fringe players. 12 team league like you're paying pretty close attention. Of course, you get bigger and bigger and like you get into like a 16 or 18 team league and you're like picking up guys that are like what 20-minute players and stuff because you need bodies, right? With baseball, it's, like, crazy because you have some guys who are coming up and, like, even even some teams are bringing up top prospects and they're not even playing them every day because everyone's so concerned about platooning players and getting guys on the right side of their splits and so it's, like, really weird, like,
Ah, baseball.
I was just writing a couple prospect little blurbs up and it's like there's some top prospects that are up with teams that are having a hard time even getting in the lineup every day and producing. So can you even roster them for fantasy if they're playing every 2 out of every 3 or 4 games and getting a couple hits here or there? Like it's it's all about the size of the league you're in, and so yeah, it's
That's
it's
crazy.
it's kind of all over the place, to be honest with you.
We're talking to Thunder Dan Palio, Thunder Dan DFS. He is, of course, the lead. I'm going to read this straight out of your Twitter bio so I get every single part of it right. The lead NBA, MLB, NFL DFS analyst, the DFS betting editor, and content manager at Rotoballer. And of course, the 2021 FSWA basketball writer of the year. And that's a perfect way to segue into what we're actually going to be talking about on today's show. I treat these off-season shows as very much a playground for my brain because, first of all, new show feed, but also basketball off-season. We can talk about whatever we want. We can talk about baseball for the whole damn show. And there isn't a whole lot of people we're going to do about it because the people listening right now are the true old man squad diehards. Hugs and kisses to you all. I think they just want something to listen to, and I'm happy to do that. You guys are the best. Thank you for helping me build this new thing. But Thunder Dan, I asked Josh this yesterday, and I'm going to ask you basically the same question. What was something that you took away from this most recent basketball season? And it doesn't have to necessarily be something that was unique to this year, but just something that kind of stands out to you as we're a month out from the end of the regular season already, which is great, by the way. Anytime we can shave off the off season is terrific. But what is, maybe a top lesson learned or something to that end?
So you're gonna like this answer, I think, based on what I know about you and how you like to play. But I'll segue the whole thing together here, I think, because you talk about Josh. So I was invited by Josh to play in a roto league this year, and first of all, like that's something I never would have happened if I didn't win that award a few years ago. Like I kind of thrust me up into like people who are. I mean, Josh is like the best of the best, right? I mean,
you're in the pantheon of heroes now, man.
well, I mean, it's like you are relevant. I'm relevant. Like people know who I am.
Mama, you
Not
made it.
exactly. So, anyways, the fact that I was playing in a league with Josh was cool, first of all, and that it was a roto league, which I'm like I've been a diehard head-to-head guy for years, right? And I was like, I'll try this out. I'm gonna like expand my horizons. I'm gonna try to like play in different types of leagues. I'm on the industry 30 by 30 dynasty league, right? With those guys, which is nuts. For 3 years now, I've been in that league. It's just
Yeah,
insanity.
those ones totally overwhelm my brain, by the way.
And like it's just like anyways, I actually did really well in that league. I finished third,
Well
um,
done.
behind Josh and another guy, and I finally it kind of hit me that like first of all, I didn't win any of my head-to-head leagues. I had injuries. I had situations where I was in, and I try not to do this. I'm pretty good about this usually, but I got into too many leagues, and a couple times I missed a lineup spot, and I had a couple guys on the bench during playoffs who, like, oh my god, it was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It happens though. Don't beat yourselves up too much. I got it. That happened to me about two seasons back, where all of a sudden I was like over 15 daily leagues, and that's when I was like, no,
yeah,
this is too
yeah,
much.
you have
I'm
to
not gonna win these anymore.
gotta cut it down. I'm going to continue to pare it down, and yeah, the one league, I'm pretty sure that the one or two guys on the bench cost me the week that whole week if I did the math, which sucked.
Oof,
But
that stings.
yeah. So point being, I'm think I'm going to come around to this idea of playing more roto and less head to head because the
Oh
injuries,
my.
man. It's like we were talking before the show about just the actual NBA playoffs and how it's it's a gauntlet and how it's a war of attrition. But like you get to the end of the head to head playoffs and you're like you built this incredible team, but like 3 or 4 of your guys are hurt and you're just losing to some inferior team and the honestly, the churning and burning and the waiver ads, like, it takes a toll on you, man. You have to go and I don't know. I was in a league where they had 6 or 7 roster moves a week, and so people are, like,
Oh.
adding 2 and 3 guys a day, and you're like
Well, the whole free agent pool is going to be on waivers.
right.
Like, you can't
Everybody's
just
on
hold enough to pick up.
right, and it gets to be where, like, people are adding the most obscure people, the most obscure players because they're the only ones available, and anyways,
Listen, so I came on here today and I tried to do it a little bit with Josh yesterday, and I like my plan is to try to play a little bit of devil's advocate. And you may have just given me the most complicated devil's advocating that I've ever been tasked with, because right now you're like saying the exact words that are always banging around in my head, which is that these problems with head to head that everybody's complaining about. I mean, how many, I'm sure you get a handful of them as well. How many dozens of tweets pop up on like April, whatever, of people that are like, I'm never playing fantasy again. My head to head league was ruined because 3 of my guys got hurt. And I'm just like, what you mean to say is you're not playing head to head fantasy again, because there's a very easy to grab onto format that solves those problems. Now, I know Josh had experimented. We talked about this on yesterday's show as well. Josh had experimented with some games cap head-to-head leagues, which eliminated some of that injury thing. I mean, okay, so what would you say to this? Because this is something that comes up with me, and I'm always happy to argue about it. People are like, well, your head-to-head playoffs should be like real playoffs. You know, if you have 2 guys get hurt on your head-to-head team, you should lose your playoff matchup. What do you say to people that try to claim that your fantasy playoffs should be like real playoffs?
I don't know. Like, it's not real. If you wanted it to be real, I mean,
Yeah,
it's not real. Like, I don't know. It just sounds, the whole premise of that is very, like, dumb
it's
in my
nonsensical,
opinion. Yeah,
because the regular
nonsensical.
season isn't like the real NBA either. We're
Right,
counting how many, like we're counting how
right,
many 3-pointers a guy makes, which like the teams don't really care about that. They want to win
right,
the damn ball game. And some of them
right.
don't actually want to win the damn ball game. My retort to that, and I'd love to hear your take, is um in my eyes, the head-to-head fantasy playoffs are actually, at the time of the basketball season, that least resembles
Mhm.
real basketball playoffs, because none
Right.
of the main guys are playing through any nagging injuries. And in the real playoffs, we're seeing it. Guys are literally playing 48 minutes of ball game until their limbs fall off. If
Mhm.
that's how players played in mid-March, the fantasy playoffs would be very easy, because
Right.
everybody that can play would play. But it's the exact opposite. So this concept of like, oh, you want your team, if your team has guys that are out, they should lose, is absurd, because guys are out for no reason in the
Yeah.
fantasy playoffs. But I also, so I don't want to just take what you said and say, yes, everybody should play Roto. I think everybody should play Roto. I think it's a really nice way to avoid a lot of that stuff. The best team typically ends up
Yeah.
winning money at the end of the year. But what would you do, Dan, if you were going to try to fix the head-to-head side? Let's
I
walk
have
through
some
that
answers.
for a minute.
So first of all, I and I know you can't keep moving it up, but I did play in a league where they started playoffs like week 20 or 19, whatever the earliest possible was. I
That's
think you
basically the trade deadline, by the way.
Yeah, right. But in that league, there were, I mean, we were through the playoffs and done with them by the time the craziest of the silly season starts, you know?
So was it relatively fair in terms of who was in and who was out?
I think so. I mean, there were still injuries and things that are outside of people's control, but there wasn't the same number of crazy, guys, bench guys producing huge lines and stars getting, sitting down the stretch. So I would move, if you're a commissioner of a league, move up the playoffs to the earliest possible that you can. The weekly player ads, you got to ratchet that down to like 2 or 3 a week, whatever the low end is. And then, my kid is yelling over there, but I cannot
That's
get her to
totally
stop.
fine. That's entirely fine. Do you know how many shows I've had over the last few years where my youths have come tearing into the room? How old are yours again?
11 and 5.
Okay. Yeah, and
So my
I got
11-year-old's at school, but my 5-year-old is just singing and
that's adorable.
just doing whatever she wants to do. She has no sense of the
I've
fact that
got 7 and 4, and my 4-year-old came running onto a show like a month and a half ago and sang Britney Spears lyrics into the microphone. So you
yeah,
you, you still got a little ways to go on that one.
I don't even know what she's singing, but if you just hear a high pitched noise, it's not. There's no fire alarm or anything. It's just my kid. So, anyways, I think the weekly player ads, ratchet those down, and then the idea of that Josh said about actual games cap, which is what you have with Roto, which in head to head would make some sense too. Like really force people to be disciplined and play it the right way and not just it shouldn't be rewarding the people who can just add the most possible players or grab all the guys. Or sometimes if you're playing the East Coast, West Coast, like your West Coast, you typically have an advantage at the end of the night. Guys get
Yeah.
hurt, we're all asleep. You can go on waivers and grab the replacement while I'm still sleeping here.
Yeah, it's
Like,
easier to stay up till midnight over here too than it is
right,
for you to stay up till 3.
right. So there's anything you can do to cut down on where there's a competitive advantage for just people to take advantage of those situations. And I think what I'm gonna do going forward is balance things out, play some roto, play some head to head, and continue to see what I like. What was interesting about Josh's league was he substituted field goal percentage with effective field goal percentage,
Hmm.
just as a nice little wrinkle, just to kind of play around with that. And
How did that impact your strategy?
well, it basically creates this kind of bubble of guys who are efficient 3-point shooters who have more value, like basically like a Duncan Robinson or a Grayson Allen or people like that who, um, and it's not just those guys, but there's some players who have a nice little boost um, in their overall value based on effective field goal percentage, and
Yeah, I
it
mean, if
all
you got like it feels like if you've got a high volume 3-point shooter who's pretty damn good from out there, they could get a significant bump. I like a Steph Curry shooting 41%
yeah,
from
Curry
downtown.
was like yeah, top. I think he was one of the top picks because of that. And I tried to address my strategy drafting. Like in head-to-head leagues, I'm typically like a punt guy. Like I like to punt field, maybe like free throw percentage, and
Yeah.
I had
You kinda have to do one in a competitive head-to-head league these days.
right, and I had this whole plan of attack where I was creating these LeBron, Giannis monster teams. I had like Webby on a team too. I was creating these like stat stuffing teams that they couldn't shoot free throws or Uh, and then in this league with Josh, I created a really efficient team with SGA, Kyrie, De'Aaron Fox. I had these really uber efficient guards paired with like Vucevic and Şengün, a couple other really versatile centers, and like it ended up being like a really weird mix of players, but they really fit the Roto mold really well. And I was in the mix for the top three there all the way to the end. So I don't know. I think if anything, I'm starting to like
You're a
over the years
convert.
value efficiency. I really do. Counting stats are great, and it's fun to see a guy put up a ton of rebounds and stats and blocks. But I really do I've, appreciate an efficient fantasy basketball player. You know?
Well, that's in my eyes, that's one of the big keys to Roto is that a lot of people that have played head to head for however many years are trying to apply that same strategy on the Roto side. Which it's funny, like 25 years ago, it was the other way. People playing Roto were trying to apply that strategy to head, and it worked for a while. And then people kind of developed the punt idea, and then that became pretty prevalent. And now, as people are sort of very slowly, mind you, because head to head is still like I think it's like 9-1 in terms of how many people play head to head versus Roto.
Yeah,
But as people start to relearn the Roto game and they're coming in and they're just like, yes, give me all the counting stats, you can make a lot of headway on the low volume or percentages categories because they tend to kind of get semi overlooked. You like
yeah,
head to head, it's not points league level because points league is its own monster where
yeah,
efficiency gets completely ignored.
yeah. I
But
hate
like
that.
some people do play head to head in kind of like a points league adjacent strategy where they'll kick one percentage category and they'll kind of not super worried about the other one. And they're not really worried about turnovers because maximizing games is so important. And if you pull that model back into Roto, you can have a great scoring team with some threes and boards and maybe assists and maybe steals, but you can't be bad at 3 or 4 categories in a Roto league or
No,
you will lose. I love that about it. So again, I'm doing a bad job of playing devil's advocate, but I love that in Roto, you really have to create a balanced team. And right now, just because of the way the general public plays fantasy basketball, you can make a lot of headway on the Roto side by
yeah,
attacking the forgotten categories, the percentages, defensive stats, and turnovers. Basically, like you
yeah.
can You
I
could kind
think
of win a
that's
back. You could even almost win a head-to-head league by going fully backwards like that. But you're relying a lot on percentages week to week, though.
yeah, and if the thing with the head-to-head league is like, it all depends on to the number of games and the player ads and what if you're in a traditional roto league, you're the games caps are your friends if you're building around efficiency. If you're trying to beat teams that are trying to win the counting stats, then the games played caps are your friends, right? Because
Mhm.
they're gonna run out of time to beat you with their numbers. So, anyways, I guess as I'm getting more of a refined taste for fantasy basketball because listen,
Welcome to the old man squad, good sir.
I know, but I welcome it. I really do because I think if there's an edge, if we could exploit that edge, then we should be doing it. Like, and if people want to take that
Yep.
from here today and apply that, then You know, any chance you can get an edge, and I do a lot of DFS and betting stuff. We're always looking for some kind of angler edge that the general public's not on, and if it's building around efficiency in head head or roto, then that's to me something that most people either aren't don't want to do because it's not as fun, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Or
It's more
or
boring.
B, it takes more time to evaluate those players and figure out the ones who are going to be low turnover guys or shoot a high
Mhm.
percentage or whatever else. It takes a little bit extra study. So
I'll say this, it's pretty easy to get your hands on a guy who averages 9 points per game.
yeah,
That's like
right,
nobody's looking at that dude, but if that guy's also getting 6 boards, 3 assists, a steal, and 1.2 blocks with a three-pointer, that guy's pretty freaking useful,
right.
particularly
Is
in
your
roto.
your your Kyle Anderson and Al Horfords of the world, I guess. You're
Yeah, Big Al. I know that technically he's not the logo of the old man squad, but for all intents and purposes, Al Horford is the logo for
Yeah,
the old
and
man
then
squad.
and he's still doing it in real life too, which is
Still doing it.
I was watching that Celtics Cavs series and I'm like, a couple games they picked on him pretty good, but then he came back and he had a huge game like in game 5, and I'm like, dang, like 22 and 15. You're like, with
Mhm.
all the efficiency and just the guy has figured out how to evolve his game over the years to where you know
Efficient body movements, I think, which we have
right,
to be familiar with as folks getting a little older ourselves here.
right,
Eh,
very much
yeah.
so.
Adam Stock, who I'd like to get on the show in the not too distant future, is kind of a punt strategist, and I know that he would have kind of additional thoughts on this idea of almost working backwards compared to what's been the general thing. I'd like to get him on, and we can go a little deeper on that. Thunder Dan, what you got going on these days? What's the haps? What's special? I mean, I know you got all these baseball things in the hopper. What I mean, I is there some other place folks can find you besides Twitter? Hit me with all the good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Twitter is the best place to look for me because that's where you're gonna find me pretty easily at Thunder Dan. I have my own betting Substack that I do that
Sweet.
it's kind of daily during baseball season because we have stuff every day, but it isn't like always every day. But I cover baseball during baseball season. I haven't done any basketball bets much. It's more when we get to the postseason, I focus more on like betting on the series or betting on futures and things like that. But during the season, daily prop bets for basketball, um, and then obviously football stuff too. During football season, we got a little bit of everything going. So that links in my Twitter bio to my Substack. Um, Other than that, I'm a rotoballer where I'm pretty much writing about baseball during baseball season,
That makes sense.
basketball during basketball season, and football during football season. But I am exploring the idea of maybe starting my own podcast, or at least with a
Hmm.
fellow brethren here. I'm sure you probably know Mike Barner, Roto Mike.
Sure. Yeah.
Mike Barner approached me about maybe starting a. He's been doing some work with me at Rotoballer over the last 6 months, which has been very cool. So we might boot something up here before basketball season and get our own little uh podcast going too. Because what I mean, why
There
not,
you go,
right?
man. Start yelling into the world. That's absolutely why not. What did I just do with my entire
I
existence?
know. Maybe you're inspired me. Like just go and do it. Like stop
Let's do
talking
it.
about it. Stop thinking about it, just do it. And the fact that you're just doing it and you're doing it your way, you're gonna build it the way you want it is like awesome, man.
It's
Like
exciting. I'm
I'm
very
happy.
excited about it.
I'm happy for you. I'm excited for
Thank you.
you. And you probably have heard this from other people, but I think you're really well regarded, not only by your listeners and fans, but by
Thank you.
people in the business. We all know you're a really authentic, genuine guy. You're not out to, you know, get anybody. You're just a good dude who wants to talk about hoops. And
That is all I want to do. You know what the problem was? Is I had really close friends in college that always wanted to talk about basketball. And then college ended. And now, like, none of my friends, like my close circle, none of them care about basketball. And I was
yeah,
like,
why
I
not?
need to rectify this. So,
Hmm.
yes, that is what I want to do. I just want to get dudes like you on a show and talk about freaking basketball. Is that so much to ask? But thank you. Those are very kind words. I really appreciate it. And you
Well,
will, the listeners, viewers can all hear this too. You guys are going to be seeing way more from Thunder Dan. I'm going to say this on a lot of pods here at the beginning. But one of the big things for me in starting this show and this network was that I really wanted to do more collaborative stuff, have more time to do that sort of thing. Because everybody knows my last show, I pretty much ran it solo, and I think there were like 300 episodes last year, and probably 285 of them were by myself, which is fine. I'm a baseball play-by-play guy. I can talk to myself for 4 hours.
mhm.
That doesn't mean I want to talk to myself for 4 hours. I'm in this head all day. It's not that great.
Yeah, you got to
And
get out once in a while. Yeah.
gotta get out. And like my interaction between basically the minute I wake up until like 9 p.m. is either to myself, which I'm an only child, so that's another thing that I've kind of done throughout my life, or my kids. I
Mm,
don't even know how to talk to grown-ups anymore.
I
So
know.
this is also fun for me. Look, a grown-up. I can see you right there on my screen.
I
Yeah.
know. I hear you. I hear you. I know what you're saying. Like there's days and weeks that go by that I don't talk to have meaningful conversations. I guess we can call this a meaningful conversation
It's
with other
meaningful to
adults.
us.
Yeah, right. With other adults, and it's certainly nice to do it. I was
Well,
curious before you wrapped up what you thought about these. You said maybe the playoffs about these. See, I actually thought Minnesota was going to win last night, and
I had the
they
Mavs on that one, so
okay, good for you. So
uh,
you have the Mavs coming out of the West, or
I don't. That's the other thing. So I was on VSiN earlier this week with my old buddy Gil Alexander and Kelly Bidlin,
okay, yeah,
and I knew the night before they asked me if I could pop on in the morning show. I was like, absolutely, of course. I've got this new podcast network too, so we can talk about that a little
plug
bit.
it. Mhm.
Exactly, get a little plug. And Gil and I go way back. We were both at pregame.com in like 2009.
Wow.
And we had I think they were the first two ever sports betting shows that were exclusively about how to handicap and not trying to sell a play at the end.
Yeah.
His was called The Betting Dork, and mine was called Today in Sports Betting. And it was we had this great bond. And so now he's continued to elevate me, which is really cool because he has a massive platform. But
Mhm.
we were talking about that specific series because on the other side with Boston and Indiana, my thought was like, I don't know, Celtics are prone to playing down to their competition even in the playoffs. I don't
Yeah.
like. I figure they're going to get out of that series, but I don't know if they cover a single game or maybe they hit 24 3-pointers and they win by 35. I have no idea.
Yeah. But they're
Uh,
coming out of these.
they're
It's
coming out
one
of it.
way. Yeah, one way or the other. They're coming
Yeah.
out of there.
But the other one for me was okay. Minnesota's coming off this grueling 7-gamer with Denver. I know they're going to have a good plan of attack, but are they going to have the energy to do it? So I had
Yeah.
Mavs in game 1 because I figured
Mm.
it was almost all a rest advantage play for me. But then they asked me this, and the honest to goodness truth is I was up like an extra 20 minutes the night before trying to decide what my answer was to the question, if you like the Mavs in game 1, who do you like for the series? And I
Yeah.
still think Minnesota because like, and then they came out after the game and Anthony Edwards was like, yeah, I thought we played all right, but like we were exhausted by the third quarter. I was like, yes, that's what I
That's
thought was
it.
happening.
Yeah. You gotta see
Um,
him hit a wall there at some point. They just
mhm.
and
um,
yeah.
but I think Minnesota will have a lot of juice for the rest of the games in this series,
Yeah.
and I think they can game plan for I mean if you can game plan for Jokic, you can pretty much
Yeah.
game plan for anybody because
And to be fair, like Luca still did not look great last. I mean, he looked okay, but he still
yeah,
doesn't look himself out there. And
no,
if Luca's not 100%, I don't
yeah,
know. I
how
don't I don't think Dallas does. I know Kyrie is amazing. Kyrie looked amazing again last night. and they're getting some nice play from the bigs. But I think Minnesota's just too good defensively, and
I agree.
maybe it goes now that they lost game one. I had them winning in 6. Maybe it's going to go 7 now, but it's certainly going to be, I think, Minnesota and Boston, which should make for a good finals. I
Should
think.
Yeah, two very different styles. Today, by the way, is a really good day to bet Minnesota if you think they're going to still come out of
Right.
that series.
'Cause you're going to get a nice bump in odds for sure.
Yep. Okay, Thunder Dan. I didn't want to take more than 25 minutes of your time, and I took 33. But I
It's
mean,
my
I knew
fault.
you.
I talk a lot.
No. All I do is talk. This is wonderful. I loved every second of it. Everybody give him a follow, Thunder Dan DFS on social media, but you'll be back on here soon because I'm not going to let long stretches go like I used to. So thank you for carving out the time. Hello to your little one. She was adorable from a distance, and we'll get you back on soon. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good, man. Thanks again, and good luck with the new network. I'm sure you're gonna make it work, make it happen. I know you will.
See, that's, classy way to show an interview, right? Just jam it into the middle of the podcast. Seamless transition. That's what I'm all about here. The height of professionalism. Big thank you again to Thunder Dan, who's always a pleasure to have on the show. We'll bug him once his, I'd like to say once his baseball stuff winds down, but then football winds up. But we'll get him on. That's what matters. We'll get him on in June. I want to try to talk to almost everybody at least once a month, preferably more, but there's going to be scheduling stuff. And like once the season gets going, then it's hard because you want to make sure you get through the boxes and things like that. Guest shows would probably be their own little side monster once the season begins, which is great. More content is fun. This is fun. Love it. Tomorrow. Oh, I forgot to. Well, it's fine. I'll remind you in a second. Tomorrow, Matt Smith. Smitty himself back on the pod. That should be a lot of fun. Recording that actually late tonight. So we'll get that cut into a show for tomorrow. Probably do it kind of the same weird way. Or maybe not. Maybe that one might be an audio show. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, another thing with this one, I mentioned it at the front end, is I use StreamYard to get these shows out on live channels. StreamYard just wouldn't stream to YouTube today or to Twitter today. I don't know why, but that's why you guys need to find other ways to subscribe. I'm going to make a big old stink about it. It's good, honestly, because the only place that doesn't really give hosts anything for doing stuff is Twitter. You get nothing for running live on Twitter. So please find the show on some other channel, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, whatever it happens to be. And that way you guys can make sure you get every show going forward. Because we're going to be talking to Matt Smith tomorrow, that likely means that early next week, we'll get back into some Old Man Squad review. We've got a few more guest spots coming up. We'll probably talk to, I would think, Dan Titus in the not too distant future. He's over at Yahoo. The other, Raphael Johnson from Roto World, Alex Rickling, who's at a lot of places, but he and I love to talk about old dudes. And then Jonas Nader. I'm trying to pry off the soccer pitch, get back on the show. That's of many, by the way. These are not all going to be next week, of course. We'll be spacing them out, but it's just really nice to get to talk to all these cool folks here on the show, and I hope you guys enjoy those as well. That will wrap us up here on this Thursday. I am once again Dan Besbris, your host of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball and the founder of the Old Man Squad Sports Network. Keep your eyes peeled to at Dan Besbris on Twitter, at Old Man Squad on Twitter, because we've got new shows launching. 4 shows launching. We could do that with podcast. I never really, what I struggle with is I struggle with ending these shows after a guest segment because I feel like I haven't done enough work. But I have. It's done. Have a great Thursday, everybody. I'll see you all tomorrow. Yeah, it's true. I'm done.